If someone had told me 2 years ago that I would end up in the middle of a drama worthy of a cheap soap opera, I would have laughed. I always believed I was good at choosing people, at telling the difference between good intentions and bad ones. But then Alex appeared. I met him at a party my classmate was hosting. Normally, I hated crowded gatherings. Too many unfamiliar faces, too much noise, conversations that went nowhere. But my best friend convinced me to come. Come on, you need to relax. You've been stressed for weeks. Maybe you'll meet someone interesting, she said. I rolled my eyes but agreed. Alex stood out immediately, not just because he was tall, well groomed, and ridiculously handsome, like he'd walked straight out of a lifestyle magazine, but because of the way he carried himself. Every movement looked natural, yet deliberate, like he knew people were watching. He came over with a glass of wine in hand and said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here. Am I right?" I laughed. Normally, I hated cheesy lines, but with him, it didn't feel forced. We started talking, and for the first time in a long while, I actually felt interested. He told me about his work in finance, how he had just been promoted, how his company was considering sending him abroad. He spoke confidently, with that mix of ambition and charm that made you want to believe him. Over the next weeks, we saw each other constantly: coffee dates, walks in the park, late night talks where he seemed to understand everything I said without me explaining too much. He bought me flowers just because, remembered little details about my favorite books and movies, and always knew the right thing to say. Everyone around me adored him. My friends joked that I'd won the lottery. My parents said he was refreshingly polite. Even my coworkers, who normally rolled their eyes at my dating stories, wanted to meet him. And I was falling fast. But little things started to catch my attention, like how his phone was always face down on the table, or how he avoided direct answers when I asked specifics about his job. He'd say, "Oh, it's complicated, you wouldn't be interested," and then change the subject with a kiss or a joke. He claimed he was busy with projects, but sometimes whole evenings went by without a single reply from him. Still, I convinced myself it was normal. He was important, successful, busy. Of course, he didn't have time to text every hour. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. The first real crack in the perfect boyfriend image happened about 4 months into our relationship. We were supposed to meet for dinner with my friend Emily and her fiance. At the last minute, Alex canceled, saying he had urgent work. I was disappointed but let it go. Later that night, scrolling through Instagram, I saw a picture. Alex in a bar, drink in hand, laughing with people I didn't know. He wasn't even tagged. It was just in the background of someone else's post. When I asked him about it the next day, he didn't flinch. "Oh, that was a work thing." "Networking. You know how it is," he said smoothly. "I didn't want to bore you with it." And I believed him. At least I pretended to, because by then I was already hooked. Looking back now, I realize how many excuses I made for Alex. Every time something felt off, I smoothed it over in my mind. I told myself he was stressed or tired or just misunderstood. But the truth is, the signs were there from the start. I just didn't want to see them. Like the night we went to a coworker's birthday party of mine. Alex charmed everyone at first, as usual. He had that magnetic way of speaking. People leaned in, laughed at his jokes, asked him questions. He seemed to thrive on the attention. But then, when someone asked him directly what he actually did at work, there was a flicker of hesitation. Just for a second. He smiled, raised his glass, and gave a vague answer about overseeing financial strategies and cross-border projects. It sounded fancy, but if you thought about it, it meant nothing. My coworkers exchanged quick looks. Later that evening, I overheard one of them whisper, "Does he ever give a straight answer?" He talks like a LinkedIn post. I brushed it off, laughed, and defended him. But inside, something twisted uncomfortably. Then there was the money thing. Alex always paid for dinners, always insisted on picking up the check. At first, it felt romantic, even old-fashioned. But after a while, I started noticing how carefully he made sure people saw him paying. At restaurants, he'd pull out his card with a flourish, joking loudly about how finance really pays off. It was subtle, but it felt performative. Like the gesture wasn't for me, but for the audience around us. One Saturday afternoon, we were supposed to go shopping together. He suggested meeting at a high-end mall. When I arrived, he was already there, holding two shopping bags from luxury stores. He smiled and said, "Had to pick up a few things before you got here." I glanced at the bags, shoes and a watch, from brands I knew cost a fortune. But later, when I peeked inside one of them, he'd left it in the backseat of his car. There was just the store bag itself, empty. No receipt, no box, just the branded paper bag. It was strange, but when I asked, he laughed it off. "Oh, I left the stuff at home. Didn't want to carry it all day?" Again, I believed him, or rather, I forced myself to. Things escalated the night we went out with my closest friends. It was a casual dinner, nothing fancy, just good food and laughter. At first, Alex was his usual charming self, telling stories, making everyone laugh. But then my friend Emily teased him lightly, joking about how mysterious his job sounded. She said, "Come on, Alex, are you some kind of secret agent? Because every time someone asks, you give these super vague answers." Everyone laughed, everyone except Alex. His smile froze, and for a moment his eyes turned cold, sharper than I'd ever seen them. He leaned forward, lowered his voice just slightly, and said, "Some people just don't have the capacity to understand certain kinds of work. It's not my fault if it goes over their heads." The table went silent. Emily's smile faltered. I tried to laugh it off, change the subject, but the mood shifted. For the rest of the evening, Alex was quieter, tense, sipping his drink without saying much. Later, when we were alone, I tried to bring it up. "You were kind of harsh back there," I said carefully. He snapped his head toward me. "Are you taking her side?" I froze. I wasn't used to this tone from him. Sharp, almost threatening. I stumbled over my words, saying I just thought he'd overreacted. He sighed dramatically, then pulled me into his arms. "I just don't like being mocked, okay? You know how hard I work. I don't need people doubting me." I nodded, though unease settled deep in my chest. From that night on, I started noticing more cracks. His temper flaring when things didn't go his way. His tendency to talk down to waiters or cashiers, as if their mistakes were personal insults. The way he insisted on always choosing where we went, what we did, who we spent time with. It was subtle, but the control was there. One night, I decided to surprise him at his apartment. We usually texted before meeting, but he'd been distant all week, claiming he was buried in work presentations. I showed up with takeout, thinking it would cheer him up. But when he opened the door, he didn't look happy to see me. In fact, he looked startled. Behind him, the apartment was a mess, not in the normal, everyday way, but chaotic, as if he'd been scrambling to hide things. Piles of unopened mail stacked on the counter, clothes tossed carelessly on the floor, and what struck me most, no sign of the expensive lifestyle he always flaunted. The designer clothes he bragged about were nowhere to be seen. His living room looked plain, even cheap. I asked gently, "Rough week?" He forced a laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." Then he grabbed the takeout from my hands, steering me toward the couch with exaggerated cheer. "But now you're here. That makes it better." I smiled, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. That was the night I began to wonder if Alex was really who he said he was. The night I showed up unannounced stuck with me. I couldn't stop replaying the image of Alex's messy apartment in my head. Where were the designer suits he always bragged about? Where were the signs of the expensive lifestyle he flaunted so openly? The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I asked casually, "Hey, when are you going to show me those new shoes you bought last week? The ones you said were limited edition?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly before he smiled. "I'll bring them next time." Don't worry about it, but he never did. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing patterns. Alex always wanted to meet at my apartment, not his. He avoided introducing me to his coworkers, claiming his office was too intense, and that he didn't like mixing personal life with business. When he did talk about work, the details contradicted themselves. One day he said he was working on mergers. Another time it was client portfolios. Once he even slipped and mentioned having a boss. Strange, since he had always claimed he was in charge of a team. After discovering the truth about Alex's debts, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every smile, every casual "trust me," every showy gesture felt hollow. I wanted to confront him, to scream that I wasn't stupid, but at the same time, I was terrified of his reaction. For days, I kept quiet. I needed time to think, to piece everything together. But Alex wasn't making it easy. He called constantly, dropped by unannounced, showered me with compliments and little gifts, things I knew he couldn't afford. It felt desperate, like he was trying to tighten his grip before I slipped away. One evening, we went out to dinner with a couple of my friends. I dreaded it, but I couldn't avoid it without raising suspicion. As usual, Alex played his part perfectly at first, charming, funny, attentive. He told a story about meeting an international client who wanted him to consult on a major investment. My friends looked impressed, nodding along. Then the waiter came with the check. Alex reached for it, as always, but this time, his card got declined. The silence at the table was deafening. The waiter tried again, but it was the same. Alex's confident mask faltered just slightly, but then he laughed loudly. "Ah, must be the bank's security system. They do this all the time with high-limit cards." He pulled out another card, which worked. My friends exchanged glances. I forced a smile, but inside my chest, my heart was pounding. On the way home, I asked carefully, "What happened with the card?" His face hardened. "Are you keeping score now? Do I need to explain every little thing?" "Alex, Enough!" He snapped, slamming his hand against the steering wheel. The sound made me flinch. He glanced at me, softened his tone, and said, "You have to stop doubting me." That's what ruins relationships. Doubt. I didn't respond. I stared out the window, wondering how I had gotten here. A week later, things reached a breaking point. We were invited to his sister's birthday dinner. I was nervous. I had never really spent time with his family. He always made excuses. They were busy, lived far, didn't like mixing circles. But this time, I insisted on coming. I needed to see the part of his life he kept hidden. The dinner started fine. His parents were warm, his sister was sweet, and for a while, it felt almost normal. But then the conversation shifted. His father asked, "So, Alex, how's work at the firm these days?" Still in the same position? My head snapped toward him. The firm? Same position? Alex smiled tightly. "Yeah, things are steady." I frowned. This wasn't the story he had been telling me. According to him, he was practically running projects, jet-setting between cities, but his father's tone suggested something very different. Later, when I was alone in the kitchen with his sister, she sighed and said quietly, "I don't know how you put up with him, always making himself sound more important than he is. Mom worries he's going to lose everything if he doesn't stop pretending." I froze. "What do you mean?" She gave me a sad look. "He works at a small local bank. He's a junior analyst, barely makes enough to cover his bills, but he acts like he's a millionaire. I hope you're careful." My stomach dropped. Everything I suspected, everything I'd pieced together, it was true, worse than I thought. That night, after the dinner, I confronted him in the car. "Why didn't you tell me the truth about your job, your debts, everything?" His jaw clenched. "Who told you that?" "My sister?" "She's jealous. Don't listen to her. Alex, stop. I saw the emails. I know you're drowning in debt. I know you don't have some big glamorous job. Why are you lying to me?" He slammed the brakes so hard I lurched forward. The car screeched to a halt on the side of the road. He turned to me, eyes blazing. "Because no one respects the truth. No one listens if you say you're ordinary. You think anyone would look twice at me if I told them I was just another guy stuck in a dead-end job? Number. I had to become someone. I had to build an image. And you," his voice cracked, "you were supposed to believe in me." I stared at him, speechless. His desperation was terrifying. It wasn't just about lying. It was about clinging to an illusion he couldn't let go of. When he dropped me off, I didn't say a word. I walked into my apartment, locked the door, and collapsed on the couch, shaking. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about lies. This was about control, about manipulation. And if I didn't get out soon, I wasn't sure what he would do next. The night after our fight, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying his words, his anger, the way he slammed the brakes like he wanted to shake the truth into or out of me? My mind kept circling one terrifying question. What if I've underestimated him? For days I avoided him. I ignored his calls, his texts, his late night knocks at my door. He left flowers, notes, even little boxes with gifts that looked expensive but felt empty. I didn't touch them. They stayed piled up outside my department like silent warnings. Finally, after almost a week, he showed up at my workplace. I had just finished a shift, exhausted and craving solitude. When I stepped outside and saw him leaning against his car, arms crossed, my stomach dropped. Alex, what are you doing here? We need to talk, he said flatly. His voice wasn't pleading anymore. It was commanding. I glanced around. A couple of coworkers were nearby, so I forced a smile and said, Fine, but not here. We ended up walking to a nearby park. It was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. He kept his hands jammed in his pockets, shoulders stiff. You've been avoiding me, he said. I needed space. Space? After everything I've done for you? His voice rose, echoing slightly through the trees. I took a breath, steadying myself. Alex, lying isn't doing something for me. Pretending, manipulating, that's not love. His jaw twitched. Manipulating? That's what you think this is? That's what it is. He stopped walking and turned to me, eyes burning. I built this for us. The restaurants, the gifts, the lifestyle. You think that was just for me? Number. I wanted you to feel like you were with someone who mattered, someone who could give you everything. But it's not real, I shouted before I could stop myself. You're drowning in debt. You're lying to everyone, including yourself. You can't build a future on something fake. The look he gave me then, cold, sharp, calculating, sent chills down my spine. If you walk away now, you'll regret it. You'll never find someone who loves you like I do. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself not to look back. That night, I got a string of messages from him. At first, they were apologetic. I lost my temper. I'm sorry, I just love you too much. Then they turned desperate. Don't leave me. You don't understand how much I need you. Finally, they grew dark. If you're not with me, you're against me. And I don't let people betray me. I deleted the last one without reading it twice, but the words burned into my mind. The next morning, I found my car keyed. Deep scratches ran across the paint, jagged and deliberate. My hands shook as I stared at the damage. I didn't need proof. It was him. I went to the police. I explained everything, the lies, the threats, the harassment. They listened, nodded, and told me to file a report. But when it came to real action, they shrugged. Unless he does something directly violent, our hands are tied. Just keep your distance. Keep my distance. As if it were that simple. Over the next week, Alex's presence shadowed me everywhere. I'd see his car parked near my building. I'd catch glimpses of him at the grocery store, on the street, always pretending it was coincidence. My friends started to notice too. One night, my best friend Julia pulled me aside. You can't let this keep going. He's dangerous. I know, I whispered, but I don't know how to stop it. That's when Julia suggested something I hadn't considered. You need to expose him, all of it. If everyone knows the truth, he won't have any power left over you. The thought scared me, but it also sparked something inside me. Hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe the only way to end this was to rip off the mask he worked so hard to maintain. So I started gathering everything. Screenshots of his threatening texts, copies of his emails about the debts, notes from his family that confirmed his lies. Piece by piece, I built a file of the man behind the image. It felt dangerous, like holding a bomb in my hands. But for the first time in months, I also felt strong. When Alex showed up at my door again, smiling like nothing had happened, I didn't cower. I met his eyes and said, It's over, Alex. I know who you really are. And soon, so will everyone else. For a moment, his smile faltered. His face darkened. Then he leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath. You think you've won, he whispered. But you don't know what I'm capable of. And then, just as suddenly, he stepped back, gave me a cold little smile, and walked away. I stood frozen, heart racing, knowing one thing for certain: the final confrontation was coming, and I wasn't sure who would survive it. The days after Alex's last visit were unbearable. I lived in constant tension, every sound outside my door making me jump. At night, I triple checked the locks and left the lights on, even though I hated sleeping that way. But more than fear, there was determination. I kept building the file, saving evidence, documenting every encounter, making sure that if something happened to me, the truth wouldn't stay buried. One Friday evening, Julia came over. She sat cross-legged on my couch as we scrolled through the evidence together. "This is enough to ruin him," she said. "If you post this, or even just send it to the right people, his entire facade crumbles." I nodded, but my stomach knotted. What if he retaliates? What if he... I trailed off, unable to say the word. Julia reached over and squeezed my hand. "That's why you don't do it alone. I'll stand with you. We'll make sure he can't touch you." Her words steadied me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't drowning alone. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. 2 nights later, I came home from work to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My chest tightened. I knew I'd locked it that morning. Slowly, I pushed it open. The lights were on, and there, sitting casually on my couch like he owned the place, was Alex. "You shouldn't leave your door unlocked," he said smoothly, though we both knew he had forced his way in. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Get out," he smiled faintly. "We need to talk." "No, Alex, there's nothing left to say. You've lied, manipulated, threatened me. I did all of that for you." His voice cracked like glass under pressure. He stood suddenly pacing. "Do you understand how hard I've worked to build this? To become someone worth loving? And now you want to tear it all down?" I backed toward the door, keeping my voice steady. "What you built was a lie. And it's over." His eyes narrowed. "Over? You think you can just walk away? After everything?" He moved closer, his presence suffocating. "No, if I can't have you, no one can." For a split second, terror froze me. But then I remembered the file, the proof, the leverage. "I've saved everything," I said firmly. "The texts, the emails. Your family knows. My friends know. If anything happens to me, the world will know exactly who you are." He stopped, breathing hard, his face twisting between rage and disbelief. "You wouldn't dare," he whispered. "Try me," I said. For a long moment, we stared at each other. Then something shifted in his eyes. A flash of fear, of realization. His carefully crafted empire of lies was crumbling, and he knew it. He let out a bitter laugh and shook his head. "You think you've beaten me. But you'll see. People like me don't lose." And just like that, he brushed past me and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I stood there shaking, my back against the wall. Relief and dread tangled in my chest. He was gone, for now, but I knew this wasn't finished. The next morning, I sent the file to multiple people: Julia, my parents, his sister. I even drafted an anonymous email to his workplace, attaching some of the evidence. If he tried anything again, the truth would spill out faster than he could bury it. And then I waited. For 3 days, there was silence. No calls, no visits, no shadow following me down the street. I started to hope it was over. But on the 4th day, Julia called me, her voice urgent. "He's unraveling. His job found out. His parents know. He's been cut off. He's furious, Lila. Be careful." My chest tightened. This was it, the storm before the collapse. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard footsteps outside my window, slow, deliberate. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police. But the footsteps faded into the distance. I didn't sleep a minute. I knew the final confrontation was coming, and I wasn't sure if I was ready. The air in my apartment felt heavy in the days after Julia's warning. Every creak of the floorboards, every passing car outside made me tense. I knew Alex wasn't gone. Men like him didn't just disappear quietly. He had lost too much, and people like Alex couldn't stand to lose. That Friday, I decided I couldn't keep living in fear. I packed a small bag, planning to stay with Julia for the weekend. She lived across town in a building with a security guard and cameras. It felt safer than being alone. But as I stepped into the hallway with my bag slung over my shoulder, I froze. Alex was there, leaning casually against the wall near the elevator, as if he'd been waiting all along. Going somewhere? He asked softly. My throat went dry. Get out of my way. He smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. You ruined me, Lila. My job, my reputation, my family. They all turned their backs on me. Because of you. Because of your lies. I shot back, my voice trembling but firm. You did this to yourself. His smile vanished. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. I told you before, if I can't have you, no one can. My pulse hammered. My fingers tightened around my phone in my pocket. I pressed the side button 3 times, the emergency shortcut Julia had made me set up. Somewhere, silently, a signal went out. You need help, Alex, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. But I'm not going to be your victim anymore. For a moment, his mask cracked completely. Rage twisted his features, raw and ugly. He reached out, grabbing my arm hard enough to make me wince. That's when the elevator doors opened. Julia stepped out. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, his hand on me, my bag dropped on the floor, the look on my face. Without hesitation, she shouted, "Let her go." Alex froze, his grip tightening just for a second before he released me. This isn't over, he hissed, backing away. Then he turned and bolted down the stairwell. Julia rushed to me, pulling me into a hug as my knees nearly gave out. I called the police the moment my phone buzzed, she whispered. They're on their way. Minutes later, the building filled with flashing lights and the sound of heavy footsteps. They caught him 2 blocks away, still running, wild-eyed and frantic. The weeks that followed were a blur of police statements, court dates, and endless conversations with lawyers. Alex was charged with harassment, breaking and entering, property damage, and more. His debts had already caught up with him. Now the law did too. But more than the legal battles, it was the silence afterward that felt surreal. For months, I had lived in constant fear of his presence. Now, suddenly, it was gone. The air felt lighter, the shadows shorter. One evening, sitting on Julia's balcony, I let myself breathe fully for the first time in what felt like forever. The city lights twinkled below, and the summer air was warm on my skin. You did it, Julia said quietly beside me. You got your life back. I smiled faintly, though tears pricked at my eyes. I don't know if I'll ever be the same. You're stronger, she said firmly. Don't forget that. And maybe she was right. Maybe strength wasn't about never falling into the trap. Maybe it was about surviving it and learning to never let it happen again. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time since Alex entered my life. The words came slowly, but with each line, I felt lighter. I am not his story. I am not his lies. I am my own. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.